All right, all right. Welcome to the Empowering Children Overcoming ADHD opportunity that we have to be able to look at how to empower children that are basically 13 and under, 14 and under to overcome ADHD. We're going to focus together in this journey on equipping you with accurate information, with a plan, and then walk with you as you empower your child to reach the goals that you have for them. The important thing in our journey to understand is that there's such a beautiful world that you are likely not experiencing right now. There's a beautiful world of opportunity for your child. There's a beautiful world of empowerment, capability, and the opportunity to truly feel good about themselves inside. There's so much that you, as a parent, as a person who is a relative of a child who is heavily involved in trying to help them to have the best life possible. There's people out there who are professionals who want the children that they are exposed to and have the opportunity to work with to have the best lives possible. So we're here today because I know you care. And because I care and you care, we get to unite in the purpose of empowering children to overcome ADHD. The cool thing is, the beautiful thing is that ADHD can be overcome. So that's what we get the opportunity to talk about today. And we're not talking about just living with ADHD, but we're talking about the accurate information about ADHD. We're talking about you being empowered, equipped, and not equipped because I'm here to just tell you what to do. I'm here to offer you tools and resources and information that you can draw upon to put together with your own wisdom and your own value and comprise your own plan to empower your child or the children you get to work with to reach new heights and the heights that you could only dream of. So that's why we're here. We're here. I say that I'm AJ McMahon, and I've been fortunate to be a licensed professional counselor in the state of Arkansas for over 25 years. But I'm really here today as a representative of the desire to see the beauty of our children really blossom, to really come out. I'm here as a as a fellow parent. I'm here as a person who has the opportunity to professionally get to work with families and empower kids. So I'm here because of you. And I'm here because the children that we have the privilege and opportunity to come into contact with, it is such a great and wonderful opportunity. And with that opportunity, we've got to do our best. And that's really so important that I say that, because not because I'm tooting my horn or AJ is so important. It's not that. It's just that I know you're out there doing your best, because so many caregivers are out there. When I say caregivers, I mean parents, I mean professional, anybody that's big, not just parents or professionals, but um, even people that are just involved in the upbringing, the empowerment, the beauty of a child and bringing that forth. As we look at this together as caregivers, I lost my thought, but the bottom line is that we're in this together, and that you care about a child or children. And so because we care, we're here to help them have the goals that you intend. And with that, it's an exciting opportunity. So I'm glad you're here today. If you want to, you can post anything in the chat, and I'll try to respond to that. I'm new to this, but we'll figure it out together as we walk together. So when we look at the three things that I've talked about, accurate information, the plan and empowerment is to be able to help you to unlock what you have, your own wisdom, your own abilities, and to be able to pass those down to the children or child that you care about. So, this is an exciting venture. In that, we're going to start today with accurate information. And I'm going to just share this disclaimer that I'm going to read here. All right. This video content is for informational purposes and not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have. The video creator is not responsible for any loss or damage resulting from the use of the information. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen in this video. Thank you for allowing us to go through that. Okay, so as we look together at the accurate information, that's what we're going to start with. Because when we're empowered with accurate information, we can make truly informed decisions. And there's a lot of information about ADHD. In fact, most of the information that any person's going to encounter, any person or professional is going to encounter about ADHD is actually not based on accurate information. And that can be a startling statement. You may want to just turn off the video because of that. But let me have the opportunity, if you will, to present accurate information. We're going to start today with looking at this book together. And this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the 5th edition, the DSM-5. This is published by the American Psychiatric Association. The DSM is important because every disorder or that is classified in the DSM, every disorder or diagnosis from a psychiatric standpoint is going to be classified in the DSM. It is the only source, the one source, and the only source. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to be a little redundant today, that classifies disorders. So whether you're therapist or whether you're a psychiatrist or whether you're a medical doctor, anyone, any professional who is working with you and giving or referring to a diagnosis is referring to the one source, the DSM. Okay, so there's only one source. There's not several sources of diagnosis. There's only one. Also, and something to note, that your trained and qualified professional, whether they be a licensed professional counselor like myself, whether they be a psychiatrist, whether they be a medical doctor, as long as they have the appropriate qualifications, then they are equally able to diagnose from the DSM. So a psychiatrist doesn't have any more authority than a counselor or any other trained healthcare provider in the field of mental health. Licensed clinical social workers, anyone who is qualified has the same level of authority to diagnose from the DSM. So when it comes to the DSM, we get an opportunity to understand what the leaders from the American Psychiatric Association have put together and categorized, what they share with us about any particular challenge or disorder. Speaking of, let me just say that ADHD is a real phenomenon. We're not here to debate whether the struggle, the challenge, the stress, the difficulty, the taxing experiences that you're going through, that your child 13 and under are going through, are real. That's not even a consideration. Of course, what you're going through, what they're experiencing, what you're seeing is real. There's no question about that. The question is, when it comes to accurate information, is what does the DSM, I'm going to hold it up again. What is the DSM? What does history and what does science actually tell us or share regarding the DSM? Because there's narrative and there's accurate information when it comes to ADHD. So we're here to dispel the narrative, get to the accurate information that I plan in our walk together to show you as much as possible so that you can make informed decisions about what you think is best in your journey and your plan to empower your child or the children you get to work with to overcome ADHD. So that's why we're here. All right. So when we start with the DSM, all right, I'm gonna take a breath. Okay, take a breath. All right. Now let's get into the DSM. All right. Got a handy bookmark here. Let me try to use it. Okay. All right. The DSM. I'm going to read from it because, again, we want to talk about accurate information. And so, accurate information, we want to look at sources and then we want to try to understand in context what the information presented means from the perspective of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders by the American Psychiatric Association, from historical accounts, actual historical accounts, and from science. All right. So here's what I'm going to read. This is on page 32. The DSM has a section called if you can see this, neurodevelopmental disorders, right? How many of you have heard that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder? Well, the DSM reads and tells us that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So stick with me. If you have time, please see this video through because I hope this accurate information that may be challenging will also be enlightening. Okay, reading from the DSM. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder defined by impairing levels of inattention, disorganization, and or hyperactivity, impulsivity. Inattention and disorganization entail inability to stay on task, seeming not to listen, and losing materials at levels that are inconsistent with age or developmental level. Hyperactivity impulsivity entails overactivity, fidgeting, inability to stay seated. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, thank you for your patience. Inability to stay seated, intruding into into other people's activities, and inability to wait. Symptoms that are excessive for age or developmental level. Oh, sorry, I didn't read that well. Let me read this last sentence again so it makes more sense. Okay, hyperactivity dash impulsivity entails overactivity, fidgeting, inability to stay seated, intruding into other people's activities, and inability to wait. Symptoms that are excessive for age or developmental level. In childhood, ADHD frequently overlaps with disorders that are often considered to be externalizing disorders, such as oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. ADHD often persists into adulthood with resultant impairments of social, academic, and occupational functioning. So that is one paragraph from the DSM. Now, there are probably words or phrases or concepts that stood out to you for your own particular reasons. It's important, though, that we don't just reference the DSM, which is often what is done. It's important that we try to understand the DSM the same way that this is a path to truly understanding your child or the children that you may get to work with. So when we look at trying to understand the DSM, there are key things here that we may look at right now together. As the DSM is talking about the symptoms of ADHD, well, first, actually, let me go back. Okay. Here in the DSM, under the section of neurodevelopmental disorders, the DSM reads ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So that is what the DSM tells us. In the actual criteria, which comes pages later for ADHD, it doesn't mention this again. There's no indication or link to neurodevelopment in the criteria. So that's just something to mention. Let me take a look at that really quick. I want to make sure that I am being accurate. And I know I may stumble around a little bit, and I appreciate your patience, but being accurate is so important. Okay, I'm pretty confident that in the actual criteria, which starts in the DSM-5 on page 59, because you may want to reference this for yourself, and I encourage you to do so. We're talking about accurate information because it's important that when you hear something that may be challenging, that might be different than what you have heard before, that you can vet these sources. You can look up the information. You can be able to use your own discernment to understand and to seek what actually is accurate information, because it may or may not align with what you think at this point. But the important thing is that when we have accurate information, we get an opportunity to open up our worlds. We get an opportunity to truly make empowered decisions. So when we look at this paragraph in the DSM, where it starts by saying ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, we want to also understand how it got there and what that means in the DSM. A couple other things to point out. Okay. The DSM reads that the inattention and disorganization and other symptoms that it mentions here are inconsistent with age or developmental level. I hope that through our journey, we're really going to get into that, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about children and what is actually consistent or inconsistent, as it reads here, with age or developmental level. Also, again, hyperactivity, impulsivity, there are several challenges that are mentioned, such as overactivity or fidgeting, inability to wait. Again, symptoms, the DSM reads, that are excessive for age or developmental level. Well, how do we define what is excessive for age or developmental level? How do we do at understanding from them as medical professionals about a- accurate accurately being able to understand developmental levels, because that often, believe it or not, gets lost in the process. We look and are trained and are led to classify children according to symptomology, but we are not really trained to understand children from a developmental perspective. And when I say we, I'm talking about the broad scope of medical professionals, medical doctors, psychiatrists, counselors, social workers, because as I encounter them in our trainings, as I encounter my own background, which has been excellent academically, when I look at the opportunity that I have to work with and mentor and supervise new counselors, there's a gap. There's a huge void when it comes to us as professionals talking about children from a developmental perspective. We just really hardly ever do it. We hardly ever dive into the understanding of children from a developmental perspective. The DSM indicates that we are supposed to, as professionals, distinguish children from as far as what is inconsistent with age or developmental level. So how can we do a great job as professionals of distinguishing children from a developmental level perspective if we really don't have the information on what is appropriate from a developmental perspective? If we as professionals have that struggle, how well are we doing at being able to pass down that discernment to you as parents or caregivers, people that are here to empower children. All I'm saying is there needs to be incredible understanding when it comes to kids. And that understanding is often lacking. In this journey that we have together, I'm here to help provide understanding that has come from the dedication and the effort to go beyond our traditional mainstream scopes and to understand and to explore and to gather the accurate information about ADHD, but also children from a developmental perspective. I'm not here to say that I'm the guru, I'm the expert, although I do consider myself an expert when it comes to understanding children 13 and under from a developmental perspective and empowering them. But you are also an expert. And this is what we're here to unlock. You have far more wisdom and understanding than maybe you've been led to be empowered with. You are an expert on the child or the children in your care. We're here as experts to be able to get to the foundations of accurate information so that we can work together to help your child blossom and achieve all the goals that you may feel are out of reach, or maybe you may feel that your child is on track for because you've seen a drastic difference with the implementation of psychotropic drugs. When I say psychotropic drugs, I'm talking about anything that may be prescribed for ADHD, Adderall, Ritalin, Daytrana, anything like that, Strattera. Okay, there's a variety. You may see you may see changes in your child that are drastic, that bring tremendous relief or in a child when the psychotropic drugs are introduced. But how do we understand truly the role of psychotropic drugs from an accurate information perspective? We'll get to that. But right now we're looking at ADHD, and none of this is we're not here looking at it and saying, well, this is right and this is wrong as far as the choices that you're making. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to look at it from a perspective of how do we get the accurate information, not the narrative, that we have the courage to look at the accurate information and use that to empower our plan and our children. Okay, so I have children myself. I have a daughter who's 20 years old. She's in college. She's doing well. She's working on becoming a medical doctor herself. And I have a 6-year-old son. Yes, I'm not trying to abuse my mic there, but just quite a gap. But that's how I've been blessed in my life. And as much as I get a chance to teach them, they get the opportunity all the time to challenge me to try to be a better person and a better dad. And that's what we're doing. We're just trying to be the best that we can. And so we're continuing with this journey of accurate information today. And thanks for bearing with me as we work through this. Okay, so back to the DSM. How did ADHD get placed in the category of a neurodevelopmental disorder? Because this is the place in the DSM where it tells us that ADHD is a developmental disorder. Let's look at this more closely in context. It's important that we go to the beginning of the DSM in the introduction, which I've been blown away by because it presents an accurate perspective of how ADHD is placed in the neurodevelopmental category. Let's look at this together. So in the introduction, the beginning of the DSM, the introduction here, I probably can't really see that, but there's this sectionizing. I was combining the word harmonizing. There's a sectionizing. Anyway, let me stop that. Okay, harmonizing with ICD-11. All right, what's that about? So basically, there are two groups. The American Psychiatric Association, which the leaders were organizing the DSM, this big, thick book here, and the World Health Organization. And they came together for the medical perspective in the sense that whenever you receive a diagnosis, you get an ICD code, which is a number like F43 4.20, that's an ICD code. And then the can't talk, categorization of your symptomology, which is the name of the disorder. F43.20 is adjustment disorder unspecified. Okay, so when the World Health Organization or the lead or leaders with the World Health Organization and leaders with the American Psychiatric Association were putting this together from a medical perspective, they had to combine both the ICD categorization and numbers with the DSM categorization and numbers. All right. Again, that's when you go into, and if you ask your professional, well, what is my diagnosis? A lot of times they'll say the name of the diagnosis, but they may not give the ICD number because that's more for medical billing and classification purposes. But if you ask them, hey, what's my whole diagnosis, including the diagnostic code, then they'll say something like, F41.9, anxiety disorder unspecified. So you're going to get that ICD and the DSM. As they work together, the World Health Organization, I keep hitting my mic. I have nothing against my mic here. I just, doing that thing. Okay. So as the World Health Organization and the American Psychiatric Association were working together to classify disorders in the DSM, here's what they tell us about their process. All right. Looking at this section, harmonizing with ICD-11. We're going to go to the second paragraph. And this is just for, kind of like expedience or there's a lot here. So it's just to try to get to the meat of it. But I encourage you, please go and if you can, I say if you can, because it can be hard to find a copy of the DSM. This is the DSM-5. The latest version is the DSM-5 TR, which TR stands for text revision. That's the latest version, but they both have this same introductory paragraph and information. So whether you're using the DSM-5 or the latest version, the TR, exact same introduction. The leaders, I believe, found it important to put this in the DSM. So let's look at it. All right. Early in the course of revisions, it became apparent that a shared organizational structure would help harmonize the classifications of the ICD codes and the DSM. In fact, the use of a shared framework helped to integrate the work of DSM and ICD work groups and to focus on scientific issues. The DSM-5 organization and the proposed linear structure of the ICD-11 have been endorsed by the leaders of the NIMH Research Domain Criteria project as consistent with the initial overall structure of that project. Okay, that's probably pretty boring, but anyway, just trying to give context here. Of course, principal disagreements on the classification of psychopathology and on specific criteria for certain disorders were expected given the current state of scientific knowledge. So they said, hey, we knew that we're going to, between the World Health Organization leaders with the ICD and the American psychiatric leaders with the DSM, they knew they were going to have some disagreements on the classification of psychopathology or disorders. All right, they knew that. And if you hear, it's spring and people are doing lawn work now. And so I'm sorry if that's kind of distracting, if you can hear that. All right. However, most of the salient differences between the DSM and the ICD classifications do not reflect real scientific differences, but rather represent historical byproducts of independent committee processes. Okay. To the surprise of participants in both revision processes, large sections of the content fell relatively easily into place, reflecting real strength in some areas of the scientific literature, such as All right, I want to seem competent here, so let me get this word right. Epidemiology, yeah, I got it. All right. Analysis of comorbidity, twin studies, and certain other genetically informed designs. Here, please, if you haven't tuned in to anything else, which I believe you have, but if you haven't heard anything else, please really tune into this. When disparities emerged, they almost always reflected the need to make a judgment about where to place a disorder in the face of incomplete or more often conflicting data. Thus, for example, on the basis of patterns of symptoms, comorbidity, and shared risk factors, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, was placed with neurodevelopmental disorders. But the same data also supported strong arguments to place ADHD within disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders. All right. What does the DSM tell us when we look at this accurately? The DSM shares that as the leaders in the World Health Organization and the leaders of the American Psychiatric Association were coming together to classify ADHD, that basically, let me go back to it because I want to make sure I read this accurately. That it tells us when disparities emerge, which mean that between these leaders, they didn't always agree. And so when it came to this, they had to still decide how they were going to classify a disorder. And what they would do would be make a judgment about where to put it. When it came to ADHD, it says attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, was placed with neurodevelopmental disorders. But the same data also supported strong arguments to place ADHD within disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders. The conflict was based on incomplete or more often conflicting data. The leaders, which were the only ones that classify ADHD, there's not another source. The leaders explain that based on incomplete or more often conflicting data, they had to make a judgment about where to put ADHD. It wasn't clear based on science. It wasn't clear based on the knowledge of these leaders in the American psychiatric community or even the World Health Organization about what ADHD is or where to place it. They had to make a judgment based on incomplete or more often conflicting data. The same information presented strong arguments to place ADHD in the disruptive or basically behavioral disorders category of the DSM. Why does this matter? Because the neurodevelopmental category connects ADHD with the brain. If ADHD was placed in the behavioral disorders category, regardless of the popular narrative that most, if not all, of the condition, or not conditions, but the categories or what we call disorders in the DSM are resultant of some type of brain or biochemical issue, which is not the case. It would put ADHD in a behavioral category, meaning that it was not connected with the brain, to just kind of be simple and transparent there. So when they put it in the neurodevelopmental category, that's where the connection is with this idea of the brain. If they would have put it in the behavior category, not brain, behavior, right? They're letting us know that they placed it in the category connected to the brain, the neurodevelopmental disorders, not based on consensus, not based on science, not based on accurate information, not based on agreement, but more often they had, more often conflicting data that drove this judgment. So if the leaders of the World Health Organization and the American Psychiatric Association, who put together the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the only book that classifies ADHD are not certain that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, that ADHD has anything to do with the brain, then why is everyone else, meaning the people doing videos, podcasts that are speaking, the doctors, the professionals, why is no one talking about this? How can we as professionals pass down to parents or caregivers or other professionals that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder? Yes, the DSM reads ADHD is, but when you understand the context, it's because they placed it there based on a judgment, not science. So we have to understand that when it comes to ADHD, the concept of ADHD being linked to the brain, biochemistry, biodiversity, whatever type of term may apply when we're looking at it from a chemical, a brain, a synapse perspective, any of that stuff has all and only been a theory. And we're going to get into that. And this can be something that can be mind blowing. It can be something where you've already been ready to turn off this video. You may be even offended. But why? Because we're going to the source. In this video, we're looking at the only source, as ruffled as it might be, of diagnosis for ADHD and what the leaders share about that. This is not AJ McMahon telling you something, as many sources do. They just reference things. They just tell you stuff. They say this is what it is, but they're not backing it up by being able to show documentation. And the problem with that is that we're not getting or looking at accurate information, and we've got to. So when we look at this accurate information, this is the journey that we're on. As challenging as it might be, because it's important. Because when we get accurate information and we can decipher it, and we can talk about what that means, which that's what we're going to be doing, that's what we're going to be going forth with, then we get an opportunity to understand, well, what is ADHD really? How does this impact my child? And what can we do about it? And that's what we're here to do, because this is going to be more empowering. Although right now this might be confusing, not because you're not capable of understanding, but it may be confusing between what I'm presenting today and what is often presented about ADHD. This may be challenging, it may be off-putting. But I think that we have the courage, and many of you out there have this inkling. Maybe you're intrigued. Maybe something in you says, okay, I've always kind of wondered about certain things. I have been willing to think about things outside of the common perspectives. I've been challenged by some inconsistencies between what's often talked about with ADHD and what I'm seeing with my child or the children that I get a chance to work with. And I'm very concerned, or a little concerned. Maybe you're not concerned at all. Maybe it's just curiosity that brings us to the point that we can be able to try to understand truly what ADHD is from a DSM, a diagnostic perspective, which every professional, psychiatrist, medical doctor, therapist, counselor, what have you, should be understanding and referring to, including what's in the introduction. From a historical perspective, not just based on conjecture to fit the narrative, but accurate historical accounts. And from scientific perspective, not just one-off or random research studies that tell us this or tell us that, but actual verified. Thank you for that. I'm trying to get these words out. Actual verified research. And what does science actually say or tell us? What is the foundational scientific perspective from an accurate foundation when it comes to ADHD? We're going to be diving into these things. So I hope that you will stay tuned, stay connected, stay involved, because this is a process. The process is to present accurate information, that we get accurate information about ADHD. Then you take the accurate information about ADHD, and then as the uh, title of this video shares, empower. Wait, this is wild. I'm just here, okay, trying to even understand the title of my own video. Okay, all right, thanks. Just getting caught up in the moment. Okay, empowering children, because that's what it's about. As the DSM even points to, being able to understand them from a developmental perspective, so that we can empower children overcoming ADHD. Combine this with your process to help children reach heights that are either pushed by psychotropic drugs, or that are not even, maybe even considered to be possible for your child, because children are way more capable than we typically understand or give them credit for. And this is the chance to unlock your own growth and theirs. So thank you for being with me in this journey. I care about you and your child. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Maybe you can put them in the description of this video. Please like and subscribe to this video and this channel so that we can continue this journey together, because it is a journey. Please, if please try to make your comments or questions constructive. I can't promise that I'm always going to get back to your questions or comments, but I do, I do care, and I'll do my best with them. You can also email me at aj@powerofable.com, and I'll do my best to respond, as long as it can be constructive. But I will tell you that most of the time we're going to be talking in these videos, because this is the medium where I can be able to share this information. Sometimes answering questions in email can be a little bit difficult, because these are complex subjects, and I'm trying to do my best to give an accurate response. And sometimes it's more like I need to talk things through. So if you have a brief question or comment that's constructive, please let me know. And stay tuned, stay connected, stay involved, and let's continue this journey of empowering children overcoming ADHD. Thanks. Take care.